I'm not much of a writer and I don't post much. I'm a loner, to be honest. It was a lightly rainy night that weekend. I was at a party. I'm a very introverted person, so I seclude myself from people, that way nothing else happens. I don't do drugs or anything like that, I don't drink, I'm not kinky, I'm boring. I'm 23. And I don't do any of that. 23. There's no way, says Ella as she's half drunk off of some fancy wine. Young adults crowded in a large open living room yelling and screaming as glass shatters in the background. Josh! Quit zoning out. You're 23 and you have never done any of that. I snap back and respond with, oh damn, I apologize Ella. Yeah. I stuttered, slowly looking above her head with my eyes wide open like I had just seen a ghost. Ella too starts looking up, but she did it so hesitantly with a look of disgust on her face. There was a tall shadowy figure lingering above Ella. Translucent but yet black. Well, Josh. Tell me. Did it scare you? Are you feeling okay? Is everything okay? There was a pause, just complete silence, my ears were ringing so bad. You know trauma could be causing this. How are you and your father? Casey just stared at me, fidgeting because she was getting frustrated by me zoning out. No, I didn't know that, thank you. I just ignored the last question. She always asks me it and I haven't the slightest clue why she still asks. I swear she has dementia. I didn't even sign up for this, my mom did it back when I was young. She thought the reason I saw and heard things was because of the divorce. I personally think it's schizophrenia, it makes the most sense. You're welcome, that's what I'm here for. She smiled as she said that. She looks like a dumb walrus. She's absolutely huge and has teeth like a walrus. Sometimes I stare at it so she gets self-conscious about it and makes me leave the building. And that is exactly what I did. The car ride home is usually fine. The road down my street has a light tint due to the traffic lights being so old. My house is just down the street, it was made in the late 90s. Light blue house with a red brick foundation, and an awning at the door. It was a cute little 2-bedroom house. My buddy lives with me except he's never home. He's a neat freak so his room is always clean, in fact, it's so clean it looks like no one lives in it. It's good though because now I don't have to clean up after him. Nothing strange ever happens in my neighborhood. I never see or hear things. In fact, I hope Casey is a part of my schizophrenia so I don't have to stare at that horrid walrus. But I digress. My car is an old Toyota Celica, 1994 to be exact. It gets where I need to go, it was a hand-me-down from my great-grandpa. We've always had a good bond somehow. I think he's where I would get schizophrenia from if I do have it. I have always loved the outside, I just haven't been able to go outside due to these sightings. It doesn't do any harm to others or me. At least I think it's not dangerous. As I pulled into my driveway I saw that same figure I saw last weekend. Except it had eyes, I don't know how to explain it because it didn't have a color, it just was there. You could just see the EY. It just stared at me, right through my eyes. I zoned out. I saw the light, quite literally. He's breathing, an ambulance man yelled out to his coworker, police siren lights flashing, officers clattering, and cameras clicking. I mumble whilst out of breath. What happened? They wheelchaired me into the police station, officers standing in shock as to what I did. A few of them whispered about me. Quiet, yelled the chief officer. I by then was finally able to speak, and I just blurted out loud. I gotta piss. The people in charge of wheeling me just hurried as fast as they could to the interrogation room. That whole time, the figure was everywhere I looked, either by the walls or behind the officers. Everywhere. Whispering the same thing over and over again. You did it, you did it. You. Did it? It was about 30 minutes when they finally decided to come in. I kept eye contact with the figure. Standing right next to the door, just looking at me. So I just kept looking at it. An officer walks in. "Hello Josh, how are you? Sorry for the wait, had to settle a dispute about football." He giggled as he said that. It wasn't even that funny. Why'd he even laugh so hard about his joke? I just kept looking at the figure and didn't bat an eye at the officer. Another officer walks in. "Officer Smith, how are you?" They had a full-blown conversation for, I kid you not, 10 minutes. 10 minutes of this guy's Woody Woodpecker laugh. And again, none of the jokes were even funny. I asked like 5 times why I'm here and they never responded. So I yelled, "Why am I here?" They did stop, so that's good. "Oh yeah, you're here." He sighed and then laughed. "Quit lying, you know what you did. Quit playing dumb." I looked at him and just gave him a blank face. "Did I really do something bad or is this some reality show?" I said. "I swear I have schizophrenia, there's no way I don't. I talk to myself and I have pretty much no friends and I get called weird. Maybe I should get that checked out." The officer that first came in said, "This isn't a joke, you murdered your therapist. What kind of sick demented human ends someone's life when they're trying to help you?" My eyes widened, my skin turned pale and it felt like my heart stopped beating. I thought to myself about why I would do this and when I did it. I've never been dangerous like that, I've never had that thought. I looked away, and as I was turning I saw that the figure slowly seeped under the door. At this point, since how it's been happening for a while, I'm used to it. It just now came back after 2 years. My face went back to its normal color a few minutes later after I mentally calmed down and pieced it all together. "I want my lawyer." But what I actually said was completely different. "Wasn't me." That's all I said. "What is wrong with me?" The officer got mad and yelled, "This isn't a joke, Josh. How do you think murdering someone is funny?" I never laughed, never once thought this was funny, I never wanted this to happen. I never knew it would happen. The second officer said out loud, not yelling, just raised his voice and trying to deepen it to sound intimidating. "You're on air, this camera is going to the news." Guess what, they're not even cameras, they're speakers. There's one camera and it's by the door, and it's unplugged. You can see the cables cut out. I looked at him and I spoke up, "Your officer isn't the smartest. The camera has no power." The interrogation went on for 2 hours. 2 painstaking hours, and it got nowhere. All I found out was my fingerprints were on the knife and my saliva was in her liquor. Which is weird because they took a test on me and there's no trace of it in my bloodstream. They eventually just locked me in a prison cell secluded away from people. I say people because that figure is always there, I guess I'm never lonely. I laid down and talked to the figure. All this time I've never asked his name or her name. And I'm still not going to ask. I did instead talk to it. I asked why it said I did it. It responded back in a raspy voice like sandpaper against your nails. "Because you did it." It just chanted that. The same tone and the same thing. Just repeated like a broken record. That's all I could hear. I heard it in my ear, by the cell, above me, behind me. Just everywhere. I got fed up with it so I yelled at the top of my lungs, "Quit. Just fucking quit." 3 officers came running, the sound of batons clanking against their thighs each step. They all huddled over the door to the cell. They turned on my lights and saw me sitting in the fetal position facing the door. They called for the doctor in the prison and then the doctor whispered in my ear, "You did it." "Well Josh, did you do it?" the TV reporter exclaimed. I was sitting in the jury room with officers all around, 3 months after the prison incident. There was complete silence as people waited for a response from me. The lights flickering, people writing on their notepads trying to make sense of all of this. I have no idea, it is your guy's job to find out if I did it or not. The jury let out a chuckle about that. The reporter just chuckled and said, well. It isn't my job but it is their job. As she pointed at the jury. Then continued to say, well, I'll let you complete your story. Make it quick, we only have 2 hours left. Well, once I woke up from the prison I saw that I was in some sort of dark open space. The TV reporter interrupted again and said, was that a part of the incident? I just looked at her and continued my story. It was intense. A loud buzzing came from what seemed out of nowhere because there was nothing. Just a dark space. I couldn't even see my own hands no matter how close they were to my face. I was trying to figure out what happened. It was like a dream, a very realistic dream. I saw the figure in there, I had no idea how though because there was no light. It sprinted towards me on all fours yelling in the same raspy voice, Josh. Escape prison, they're going to kill you. I had no idea what it was talking about, I was in shock but yet terrified that it was running at me. I woke up, at least the doctor told me that's what happened. They said my heart stopped beating. 3 doctors were huddled all around me, inmates screaming, monitors beeping as it tracked my heartbeat. The doctors eventually got me calmed down and the warden decided to put me in the mental institution. The police officers escorted me to the institution, the sign out front in big bold black letters with a hint of rust on it due to it being so old said, White Dove Mental Institution, since 1923. I felt gross. We walked in, I had to strip down to my boxers and change into this white rough onesie. It made my skin itchy every time I took a step. People smiling through the bars above me, staring at me, not blinking. Even though I was incredibly nervous I just kept walking, with the officers still behind me. Someone peered through the cell and screamed at me, you should smile more. I didn't bat an eye. Should I smile more? I thought to myself. I'm not much of a happy guy, I've always been a quiet person. We continued to my cell. The officer next to me, Officer Anthony Brown, he seems like a very sweet guy. He also looked scared to be here, like he's never done this before. Your cell is number 356, said Anthony as he looked at me, trying to keep a calm face. The other 2 officers were rude of course. As I turned around I saw the figure glaring at me from behind the inmate by my cell. Get away! Officer Huber yelled while shoving the inmate back into his cell. The cell wasn't all that fancy. Not that roomy either. It had a small twin-size bed with thin rough blankets. The back wall had a hole in it peering through to the other side. Direct view into the opposing cell. When I thought of an institution, I thought of a brightly lit building with little rooms with nice beds and people in it. Turns out, White Dove Institution was the only institution without all those things. More of a prison. The engineer who made it had a deep hatred of mental patients so he wanted them to suffer. No one knows the reason why. And on that day February 2, 2003. I was in a mental institution.